Okay, so we're going to create a system repair disk and recovery drive in Backup and Restore and the recovery control panel applets. Now, file history is also a recovery applet. We're not really going to talk about it here. And you can also access recovery drive from the administrative tools. That is also an option. So in Backup and Restore Windows 7, there's a few options. You can set up a backup on a schedule. And here you can do either a full system image, or you can choose certain files or folders that you deem necessary. You can also create a system image, a one-time backup of all three partitions, the EFI system, the C, and the recovery. You can also create a system repair disk, which is what we are about to do. And this basically copies the recovery partition and essential boot files to a CD or DVD disk. Now you insert a blank one into your DVD drive. Now here you can see the recovery partition is 530 megabytes and the healthy EFI system partition is 100 megabytes. Now the repair disk is going to be around 500 megabytes. So I don't know if just all of the recovery partition is copied over there or maybe portions of the EFI system partition are as well, or if they're already on there on the recovery partition to begin with. But yeah, I mean, I'm using a blank DVD because I ran out of CDs. But since it's only a 500 megabyte disk that we're creating, you would be better off just using a CD. But I'm just using what I had available, so I'm using a DVD-R. So now we're going to go into Control Panel and go to Backup and Restore. And we are going to create a system repair disk. And we only have one. I only have one DVD drive installed, so that's the only option I have. So the disk will contain system recovery tools that can help you recover Windows from a serious error or restore your computer from a system image. Now we created the disk. Now it takes about, I don't know, 7 to 10 minutes. Just let it do its thing. I'm going to fast forward. There we go. It says you can use the system repair disk to access system recovery options that can help you recover your computer from a serious error. Please label your disk with the following info: repair disk, Windows 10, 64-bit. Alrighty. We've got our system repair disk completed. Now we're going to go into File Explorer and check out what we created. I'm going to look at the files on the disk. So it looks like we have three directories. We've got boot, EFI, sources, and then we have boot mgr, which just says file for the file type, and then boot mgr.efi, which is an EFI file. Now, in the boot directory, we've got fonts, a bunch of different TTF files, bootres.dll, which contains resources needed for the startup repair process. There's the BCD file, which stores info about where the bootloader, i.e. boot mgr.fw.efi, can find the Windows installation and how to load it. There's kind of gibberish when we put it in Notepad, but now we go into the EFI partition. You have the boot directory and the Microsoft directory. bootx64.efi is like a last resort boot file if no other boot files work. Again, fonts, resources. This is all the same as, so EFI Microsoft boot is the same, contains the same stuff that was just in the initial boot directory on the root drive, right? I'm going to go ahead and hide protected operating system files just to make sure that we can see everything, because sometimes with boot files in Windows, they're hidden. Doesn't really look like anything was hidden though in this case. Microsoft boot, yeah. There's your BCD again. So yeah, nothing was hidden, I don't think, but I'm gonna go to our sources folder, and it looks like this is where the majority of the recovery or the repair disk. This is boot.wim. It's a 444 megabyte file, a Windows image file. Boot.wim must be pretty important because it contains most of what's on the drive. Then yeah. I'm not sure what the difference is between these two files, bootmgr, which doesn't have an extension, and then bootmgr.efi. So let's go ahead and boot into our system repair disk. We're going to go ahead and restart the computer. And then we are going to tap, well, I'm going to tap the F2 button because this is a Dell computer and that's how we get into the BIOS. Because we need to change the boot order. Because normally just boots to the hard drive that I have Windows on. So we go to boot sequence. Right there. And then we're going to move that UEFI DVD-RW thing there at the bottom. We're going to move that to the top, just at the arrow buttons. Right, put it in the first, in the boot order. We're going to hit apply. Okay. And then exit. And it should boot into the system repair disk. There we go. Took about 5 minutes. I was just kind of sitting there staring at the screen for 5 minutes, so it seemed to take forever, but you have 4 tiles there to choose from on the main menu. This is WinRE, of course, Windows Recovery Environment. It's got a blue screen in the background with some tiles. Use a device. There's their DVD drive. If we click that, it would just boot us right back to where we are. You've got the troubleshoot options here. Startup repair, command prompt, uninstall updates, UEFI firmware settings, system restore, and system image recovery. Yeah, system image recovery. You would need to, if you wanted to recover from an image, you would have to have some sort of external hard drive with an image that you created with backup and restore. And then it would list it there in that window. And then you've got your command prompt, which opens to the X drive, which you can change to the C drive. You just type C : enter, assuming your hard drive is still functioning, which mine is. But yeah, you could have your good old-fashioned system restore as well, and then you can restore your registry, right? Because that mostly deals with the registry. I mean, it might have some other files that it backs up to, but it mostly just backs up your registry and reverts it to restore points. So again, you can access that stuff in Windows, but if you can't boot to Windows, then this is when you would use the system repair disk. So it's pretty handy. And then for CDs and DVDs, you have to press a key for it to boot. So if you don't press anything, it'll just go right back to the operating system. Yeah, so that was the system repair disk. Now we're going to create a recovery drive. Now a recovery drive is the same, it's basically the same as a system repair disk, except it's more modern, right? You use a USB drive instead of a CD DVD disk. A drive versus a disk. There I'm going to use, we're going to do 2 of them. There's 2 options to create a recovery drive. The first one, I'm going to use the 16 gigabyte one. The other one's a 32 gigabyte. But the first one, we will not back up the system files to it. So it'll be very similar to the system repair disk that we just created. It will be a little different, but the same concept though. It'll allow you to do the same things in WinRV basically. Yeah, so you'll get a checkbox, right, we're gonna go to recovery instead of backup and restore, we go to recovery, create a recovery drive, and there'll be a checkbox, and it's checked by default, but we're gonna uncheck it here. Really, you would want to do that, and we'll see why in a little while. But first, we're gonna, just because we're testing here, we're just gonna uncheck that box, and we're not going to back up system files to the recovery drive. We'll hit next. It's going to format the drive, delete whatever's on there. The drive must be able to hold at least 1 gigabyte. Everything on the drive will be deleted. That's fine. Yes, create. And again, this takes 5 minutes or so. Right, remember it's copying that recovery partition that we saw in disk management. Basically just copies that to a USB drive. You can see it's 493 megabytes, whereas the system repair disk was 478 megabytes. So the recovery drive is about 15 megabytes more stuff on it. So that's interesting. We'll have to see what that means. So on the left you have the recovery drive that we just created. On the right you have the system repair disk. Right off the bat you can see there's a few differences. You have system volume information, and then instead of boot mgr.efi in the recovery drive you have boot nxt, which apparently has to do with Windows to go. I don't know much about that. Yeah, it's just 1 kilobyte though. And then the boot file is actually a hidden file, so good thing we unchecked that box to see hidden files. And you can see that's a big difference there. On the recovery drive, we've got a lot more stuff in that boot directory. Very important directory. And there's just way more stuff in the recovery drive. You've got some bootstat.dat, you've got boot.sdi, which apparently is for RAM booting. Yeah, just more stuff in the boot directory. And if we go into EFI, which is all uppercase, and there it's lowercase, but just subtle differences. Different people must have worked on this. They used uppercase letters this time around. So there's your bootx64.efi, same file size. Again, your last resort boot file in case nothing else works. And then in Microsoft, you have a recovery directory there. You don't have it on the repair disk. If we go into boot again, these are all the same files that were in the boot directory that's on the root of the recovery drive. And that's just for older computers, I think, older BIOSes or something, right? If it's a newer computer, basically in the last 10 years, it's going to be EFI. But everything's just copied in both locations for backwards compatibility, basically. So there you've got all the boot.sto, boot mgfw.efi. That's basically your first Windows file, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's differences for sure. However, here looks like the boot.wims are the exact same size, 444 megabytes. So those are the same. So it looks like that 15 megabyte difference had to do with all those files in the boot directories. So, yeah. Again, the recovery drive is the more modern way. More like basically from like 2010 onwards, it's like you create recovery drives. Before, when CDs and DVDs were a thing, you would use the repair disk, but Recovery drive and system repair disk, it's the same concept, but the recovery drive is more modern. So it's what you would pretty much use nowadays. So now we're going to boot into the recovery drive and see if WinRE is the same. Again, we need to change the boot order. Keyboard layout, of course, US. Yeah, we have the same 4 tiles as before. Continue, turn off PC, use a device, troubleshoot. No, those are my devices. I got plugged in the HP USB drive and the DVD. Again, you have your 6 tiles in the troubleshooting portion. Command prompt again opens to the X drive. It's kind of like I think it works in RAM if I'm not mistaken. Again, system restore. We've got our restore points we can revert back to. Troubleshoot background. System image, we don't have one, but if we did, it would be listed there, hopefully. We could just re-image the computer if our computer was rotting from the inside out. Actually, that would be good. On the surface, they appear to be the same thing. But again, when we looked in File Explorer, the files were a little bit different, so that's interesting. So yeah, we've created the system repair disk on the DVD. We created the recovery drive with the HP drive. Now we're going to use the SanDisk, which is the 32 gigabyte drive, to create the recovery drive. But this time we're gonna keep that box checked, where we're going to save the system files. And it's gonna make a big difference, actually. Again, we're going to go to Control Panel, Recovery. We're going to go to Create a Recovery Drive again. And we're going to leave that checked. We're going to hit Next. Drive must be able to hold at least 16 gigabytes. Remember, before it said 1 gigabyte. So that's a big difference so far. 16 gigabytes versus 1 gigabyte. Create, and I fast forwarded it, but that took 2.5 hours, folks. Yes. If you do this, go to a movie or something, because it takes forever. Now if we look into File Explorer, on the left we have the one we just created. On the right was the first one we created. So far it's the same. There was an XML file there in the root directory, but everything in the boot directory is the exact same. All those files are the same file size, but you have that reagent.xml file. That's the first difference so far. If we go into EFI boot, we have our, again, boot x64.efi, the last resort boot file. If we go into Microsoft boot from the EFI partition or directory, again, we have those same boot files, all those KD underscore DLLs, whatever they do, memtest.efi, secure boot recovery.efi, win si policy.p7b. Wow, who knows what that is? No idea. Recovery folders are empty in both. Okay. So let's check out the sources folder. Oh, okay, yeah, that's where it's different. So yeah, again, well, you have the boot.wim in both, and those are the same like before. But you got all these reconstruct.wim files, which are almost 4 gigabytes. The first two are almost 4 gigabytes. The second one's about 0.5 gigabyte, but and then an OEM directory, pbr-diskpart.txt, another XML. Then you've got a Windows command script file and another resetconfig.xml, Microsoft Edge HTML document. Okay, interesting. So yeah, that's That's a big difference, actually. And we'll see once we boot into this recovery drive, we'll see what that means, because it'll change the recovery environment just a smidgen. Our system volume info folders are the same though. So yeah, ideally you would want to create the second drive, the bigger drive. It takes a lot longer, but it gives you more options, which we'll see here in a second. So like 8.5 gigabytes versus 493 megabytes. So quite a big difference. Let's check out WinRE booting from the second recovery drive that we made. We're going to restart the computer. Again, change the boot sequence to UEFI USB. Put that at the top above the Windows Boot Manager. Up to number 1 there, first place. Apply. OK, and exit. And it will boot to the recovery drive. Yep, this is all the same. Choose your keyboard layout. It's been on all of them so far. And there it is. Recover from a drive. Reinstalls Windows from the recovery drive connected to this PC. This will remove all your files and apps. This is essentially resetting your PC, right? And you've got your use a device, troubleshoot. You've got your 6 tiles as before. Nothing's changed there. It just gives you that option to reset the PC. It says recover from a drive, but it's the same thing as going to system settings and going to update and security, recovery, and then reset this PC. It's the same exact thing. It's just under a different name. So essentially those 8 gigabytes extra data that we copied over to our recovery drive is basically the factory image reset. All right. Let's just for fun go into the advanced startup, and this will send us into WinRE from Windows settings. And we got our 4 tiles. But when we go to troubleshoot, we'll have the reset this PC option, which again is it's the same thing as recover from a drive, right? That we just saw. It's just under a different label, but it looks like startup settings is in the troubleshooting advanced options menu, which was not there before. So it looks like you get 1 extra tile. You can change Windows startup behavior. And then there's our system image recovery. So now we have 7 tiles when we boot into WinRE from Windows settings. So yeah, reset this PC. Although clicking on this time, it actually is a little different because it's taking us to the Dell screen. It says preparing. Before it didn't do that. But the final result is the same. I did do this before. I reset the PC from settings, and then I also covered it from a drive, right? And it ended up being the same factory image reset. So it's the same process, just subtly different. So there you have it.